I think that from a technical standpoint, it's absolutely been ugly. I think the drawdown, which started in mid-December of last year, which has lasted for basically 330 days, has seen no abatement in terms of the price pressure. The $5,900 price level that has acted as a support for a few times during 2018 really kind of broke down towards the end of last week. We had some institutional buyers come in on the OTC side, but the flow on the retail side was too much. Right. And once the price kind of hit the mid 5,500s, I think it was basically a straight downhill up into the $4,200 level right now.
You're talking about this as if it's like a real thing and as if it's, like the technicals. I have a sort of maybe a larger question here, which is, are we in a moment where people are saying the emperor has no clothes? Effectively, you're watching it drop, and the bottom here is not 4,000 or 3,000 or some technical, but the bottom is much worse than that.
I think it really is dependent on your time horizon. In terms of, is this a good buy opportunity? If you're a day trader or looking to make a quick buck on looking at it, so buying a dip here and then trying to sell higher, I think that's really difficult. I think the key thing to keep in mind for the longer term buy and hold investors is that Bitcoin has done this before. This is about the fifth or sixth 75% plus drawdown that we've seen in the 10-year history of Bitcoin. And so if you have that lens, I don't believe institutional investors really ultimately care where the price of Bitcoin ends at 2018, simply because they're looking at things 3 to 5 years out.
Sure, Michael, but at the same time, in the past, people would make the argument that there is a floor in the price of Bitcoin simply because of the mining costs. At this point, we are below what most mining costs are, and mining costs will only go higher as we get closer to the last Bitcoin that will be mined a couple years out. So how do you explain what the floor could be in Bitcoin this time around if it's already violated what had been perceived as a floor, which is the cost to mine one Bitcoin?
So the cost of mine is going to go down, simply because the hash rate is dropped and less miners are sort of operating.
Will back off because it costs too much, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
But the largest miners are willing to currently mine at a loss up until that difficulty adjustment kind of happens on the Bitcoin network, so that the price, the break-even price sort of readjusts itself over time.
Hey, Michael, let me ask you a separate question, and I don't know if we're going to go too far in the weeds, but let's be careful and try to figure it out for the audience here. One of the things that has happened literally over the past 2 or 3 weeks now is a fight within the Bitcoin community and the creation effectively of 2 versions of Bitcoin.
Cash.
There's Bitcoin Cash. And it raises the question, if the whole idea of Bitcoin was there was going to be a limited amount of Bitcoin. This forking, if you will, so now that there's now a separate Bitcoin, it means that there's now double the amount of Bitcoin that were available. You have to then decide which one you actually want. Doesn't this undermine the whole idea of what this was about to begin with? And isn't that really why we've seen the price drop the way it has?
There's no question that I think the drama that played out in the Bitcoin Cash network sort of led to the price action that we saw towards the middle and the end of last week. But that's an important distinction to make. This happened on the Bitcoin Cash network as opposed to the real Bitcoin. There's a larger question from a philosophical and investment perspective as to which attributes of the digital currency is it that you're buying into. Is it the payments angle that the Bitcoin Cash network has always been going after versus the more speculative but eventually turn into a store of value coin that the Bitcoin network does?
Isn't this the problem? Ultimately, we don't know what the heck is going on. Nobody knows which one. People are worried about which one they're buying. I mean,
well, then you shouldn't buy what you don't know, because Bitcoin Cash was created last year with a fork for Bitcoin, and now this war is a hard fork of the Bitcoin Cash network to ABC versus SV.
Correct.
So,
but you don't think that all of this is confusing the issue for most investors?
But you can say that about equities. I'm just trying to play the devil's advocate on this.
But
for
even
stock
beyond
investors,
that,
that's confusing as well. You don't invest.
You can believe in cryptocurrencies. The question is, do you believe in Bitcoin? I believe in cryptocurrency. I think we're going to have cryptocurrency be a big part of what goes on as far as transactions being run across my kind of businesses. But I don't know that it's going to be Bitcoin. Why Bitcoin instead of one of the dozen other cryptocurrencies? And if having 2 Bitcoins is a problem, isn't having 20 cryptocurrencies a bigger problem?
But but Melissa, you raised a good point about knowing what you're buying. And my question to Michael is, this year's seen de-risking of
Everything.
People who bought stuff because it was going up. Either they were short
Right.
the VIX in January, got liquidated. They were short the FANG stocks. You know, a lot of people they were long the FANG stocks, sorry. And a lot of people were long for the right reasons, but some just bought it because it was going up. So, Michael, how much of this selling is just that? People getting out either by force or by will in stuff that's not working, that they were kind of tourists in the space to begin with.
So I think a lot of the selling that happened in earlier to mid 2018 is exactly that. So the folks that experienced and sort of bought Bitcoin for the first time in 2017, either right before or just right in the middle of the bull run, and then either realized losses or decided to take whatever gains they possibly could and got out. What we've seen sort of in the last week or so, at least at Genesis, is that we've seen some folks who have not yet sold. Sort of folks who bought in 2016, even before the 2017 run, have started to liquidate and take some gains.
And
so
Michael,
whether it be for,
what do volumes look like? Because we talk about this as if it's, you know, we talk about this as if this is like the stock market. What are volumes looking like right now?
Volumes are probably still half to 60% lower than the bull run from 2017. But there are still multiples higher than we were at the start of 2017 as well. So it really kind of depends on the time frame that you're looking at. But if you're looking at, hey, the all-time highs in terms of price and volume, we're still about 50% back.
And how correlated do you think Bitcoin's price has been with, for example, the PayPals or Squares of the world? I don't know how you look at any of these kinds of things. And the reason I ask is I also wonder, just even when you look at tech stocks, whether it's FANG stocks, I think people in Silicon Valley are the ones who've been buying this stuff to begin with. As their net worth is falling, I think some of them are saying, oh, I can't afford. Maybe they did this on margin. I don't know how this happened to begin with.
I think there's certainly an element in the carryover into the stock market where certain stocks that have sort of the Bitcoin exposure got a little bit too much credit during the bull run. And you're kind of seeing the opposite, where it's only a very small percentage of their top line, yet their stock is ultimately being punished as a correlation to what's kind of happening in the Bitcoin price. Ultimately, though, if the institutions are going to get into this space, which we all believe that they will, I think the asset class naturally does become a bit more correlated over time, as opposed to the uncorrelated behavior that we've really seen in the history of Bitcoin.
Just quickly, Michael, where do we find the floor in Bitcoin here?
It's really difficult. There's small levels of resistance, and we've seen the 4,000 level get tested twice now in the last couple of days. But I really doesn't think there's too much sort of in the mid threes, and so you really won't find it until you kind of hit the 3K flat level. Wow.